I'll jump right in. Yeah, and so the way I frame it too is, we're going to talk about the housing crisis and whether it's a crisis or an opportunity. And I think it's a little bit of both. Short answer there. So who am I? So I'm the Southern California PadSplit market manager. What I do is I wear multiple hats here at PadSplit. My main role is to onboard investors onto our platform and get them from 0 doors to 12 doors. At a certain point, once you hit 12 doors, we do pass you over to what's called a host success manager. And the host success managers are people that work with our larger portfolio hosts. So that's one of the hats I wear, is that initial onboarding, teaching about co-living. But the other hat that I wear is I'm a marketer for co-living. I like to call myself a co-living evangelist, right? I'm out there spreading the good word of co-living and PadSplit itself. So I do a lot of events, a lot of presentations, a lot of webinars, things like what we're doing here today. That way we can learn more about what co-living is as an investment strategy, and also learn more about what PadSplit does. As far as my personal life, I'm a father of three, soon to be four. My baby is due on November 4th, so that's coming up here sooner rather than later. But it is number four, so I hope that I can consider myself a veteran at this point. But yeah, that's what I got going on. I have three other kids, all seven and under. So it's busy household over here. And I've been in real estate for about 12 years now. I started off as a title rep, working for Stewart Title back in the day in Orange County. I went during COVID. I switched over to. I've always kind of worked for prop tech companies, so I started off in the industry at Title365, which was a title startup, and then we were acquired by Stewart, and then worked for a couple other title companies, and then transitioned over to a agent referral platform called Homelight, and now I am at PadSplit. But I've done a lot of different roles, almost every role I think in the real estate side of the business. I've been doing. I have my broker's license in real estate. I've been a title rep. I've been a loan officer. I've done a lot of things. So touched a lot of the aspects of buying and selling real estate for sure. If you scan this QR code will take you to that link tree that I posted in the chat. So I know I always like to post that in the chat specifically because I know that some people are on their phones listening and maybe don't have a chance to grab that right away. But feel free to grab that. Like I said, that's where my meetup group is, and you can sign up for that. That'll alert you every time I post a new event where I'm speaking or hosting in Southern California. And then our website's on there, so you can feel free to check out PadSplit. Don't see the QR code. Okay, it should be right here at the on the screen on the slide here. If not, don't worry, it is that link tree code, and I will repost that here just so that everybody has it. I want to make sure that you're able to see that. So Michael, it is now in the chat again. So that's the same thing that the QR code will take you to. All right, so now we'll jump right into it. So what is PadSplit? At the end of the day, we are a technology company and what we serve as is we're a marketplace, a two-sided marketplace that connects investors who are looking for extra cash flow and higher returns by utilizing a rent by the room or a co-living model. And we serve as that marketplace that connects those investors with the renters who are looking to rent just a room in a property. And what I like to frame it at, or I always like to get the vocabulary out of the way. So our investors, we call them hosts, and our tenants, we call them members, and we'll talk about why we call the tenants members in a second. But we'll get a little bit more into the specifics of our services and things like that we do. Eric says that he's having issues with audio and video. Just want to make sure, is that just me? Okay, yes. Linda, thanks for handling that.
Hi,
So
I am hearing you perfectly. And just to let everyone know, we are also videotaping this.
okay.
And Michael says he's not seeing the video. We are not showing a video. It's just a screen right now, Michael.
Yeah, you should be seeing a slide deck. That should be it. And you might have to, if you're on your phone, Michael, you might have to like swipe to the side or something, because sometimes it'll just show me and Linda, and then you just have to slide to make sure that you're looking at the presentation. Ken, we'll talk about the HOAs here in a second, but good question. We'll talk about That's interesting. Not sure why the slides aren't showing. Um, but I can always send a copy of the slide deck to anybody that's interested. And like Linda said, this recording will be sent out. But like I said, Ken, we'll get to your question when we talk about like what markets make a good area for pads. But Charlotte is a great market for us currently, but we'll talk a little bit about that in the future here. And so why does this problem, this housing crisis, all this stuff matter to real estate investors, right? Um, Thank you, Lawrence. Right now in the real estate market, it's tougher and tougher to make money, right? Interest rates are high. There's a low inventory of properties that are good fits for investing. Long-term rentals aren't yielding the same that they might have, a couple years ago. And even then, it's harder to cash flow them because of the fact that, interest rates are high. You're having to, the purchase prices are high and rents haven't gone up the same rate as those purchase prices and interest rates. And then for Airbnbs, there's a lot of Airbnb investors, short-term rental investors out there. It's harder and harder to make money in that space due to regulations and saturation. A lot of cities are outright banning Airbnbs. Some cities view that as taking housing stock away from the current or the local people that live in the area. I know in Southern California, I work with a lot of hosts that have Airbnbs that have struggled with licensing. I talked to someone just this morning, has a property that he's not able to get his license for his Airbnb, and it's been a pain in the butt. Huntington Beach, super hard to get a license. Beverly Hills recently just banned outright short-term rentals. So, it's tougher and tougher to compete in that space. And then, even flippers, I talked to a lot of flippers recently who, if they didn't purchase the property at the right price, they're staring down the barrel of losing money when they go to sell because of the fact that they're underwater. The market's moving really fast in different areas. And so when it comes to, I talked to a big fix and flipper here in Southern California just 2 weeks ago, and he was saying, I used to look at things as a 90-day turn time, and that's how I would price things out. And he's like, now if I can't turn in 30 days, I don't even want to do it because it's too tough to time everything with the way the market's moving. So those are all the challenges and the unfavorable conditions for investors out there. And so that's one side of the coin, right? What's the other challenge for the renters, the tenants, right? So these numbers are just going to be based out of LA County for the most part. However, like I said, a lot of these things can be applied to anywhere, any market in the country. Just the numbers change a little bit. And really, there's nearly 500,000 low-income renter households in LA County that lack access to affordable homes. And you need $54,000 a year in order to qualify for a median one-bedroom apartment at $1,500 a month. Now, a little spoiler, I'll show it a little bit later that there's actually not very many $1,500 a month one-bedroom apartments. That stat was taken from the entirety of LA County, which includes like Lancaster, all these far out places, nowhere near the center of LA and things like that. So that number is even higher as far as what the median would be for like what most people think of in LA. And so 19% of the workforce can't qualify for most apartments. And then in addition to that, you need to have a deposit, 620 credit score, utilities, furniture, all that stuff. And there's a shortage of this affordable housing units in Los Angeles County. The numbers that I've seen have ranged from about 270,000 to 510,000 shortage. And we'll talk about how we can kind of tap into that. Like I said here, this number, this search is from apartments.com. It's actually quite a bit old. And as you can see, this search was actually capturing a lot of Riverside and San Bernardino counties as well. And when we were searching for less than $1,500 a month, one-bedroom apartments, we found that there was less than 2,000 of those rentals available. So we're showing that, it's a struggle for investors to make money and a struggle for renters to find someplace to live. And who are these renters, right? At the end of the day, these are the renters that support our communities by working in the jobs that maybe don't pay as much, but they're necessary, right? Waiters, bartenders, baristas, delivery drivers, Uber drivers, all the people in society that, are kind of like the underpinning of our society. They are working people, they make income, but maybe they just don't make enough to buy a house or maybe even afford a one-bedroom apartment. Those are the types of people that tend to find PadSplit as almost as truly a godsend. And I will say, like, that's one of the amazing things about working at this company is it's very feel good, right? You get to help investors make extra money as well as house people that are looking for extra options when it comes to housing. And really, these people are renting just a room in a property, right? So when I ask people, hey, people say it to me all the time. They're like, who's going to rent these rooms for that price? And at the end of the day, you'd be surprised. There's so many people out there who are just looking for anything they can to save 300 or 400 extra dollars a month on their rent. And they're definitely willing to do this, and they're already doing it. Co-living is happening every day around you. It just maybe isn't as publicized as we talk about it. And so we talked about that housing shortage. And so by using existing housing stock, we can actually solve the housing shortage as far as unit goes, right? Unit count goes. There's millions of spare bedrooms in the United States. I think this number was actually a typo. It should be 13.7 million spare bedrooms in the United States. And the United States needs 7.3 million affordable homes. So by using those extra spare bedrooms, you would actually be able to build, have that supply ready to go. Now, granted, that's never going to happen. Not every single one of those 13.7 spare bedrooms is going to be or turned into a housing unit for somebody else. And on top of that, not every person that needs a housing unit is a single person looking to rent just a room. But it shows you that there's a lot of potential there. So here's where the opportunity is, right? There's an underserved market with a high demand. These workers who are just looking for a place to live and be able to be close to their jobs and be able to survive in the communities that they're serving. I always tell people, yes, you live in maybe in a nicer neighborhood, house will be worth 1 million, 1.5 million, even more. But you still go to the Starbucks down the block, right? And where do those people live? That's what you're thinking about. You with your family and your kids are probably not going to be a good renter for PadSplit, right? Because it's too small of a space. But that person that's helping keep the community going, that's the person that is more looking to rent just a room. And so we talked about that there's that mismatch between the supply and the demand, right? There is huge demand for these housing units, and there's just not enough supply of it, right? There's a 500K shortage of properties to meet that market need, and there's no access for that demand. The rental prices are just so high that they can't qualify with their income. And that's where PadSplit comes in and co-living comes in. We are a private solution to a public problem. So instead of spending millions of dollars per unit. If anybody else is in Southern California, there's the cities out here spend, I think LA City spends about $1.1 million to bring on one affordable unit in LA City. So without using tax dollars and all that expensive affordable housing grants and all that stuff, we can actually help alleviate a lot of this housing problem with the existing housing stock and with investors who already own a lot of these assets. And so this is where co-living comes in, right? Co-living helps single-family investors get multifamily level returns. So this is our classic. If you've ever met me at an event or anything like that, we always have this banner up. This is on a lot of our marketing materials. Um, we have our classic like 4 bedroom house that you would rent maybe for 4,000 a month. And these numbers are estimates, right? It's going to vary greatly depending on what location you're in and things like that. But we assume like a $2,800 a month net income maybe on this property. And then what we recommend, and this isn't a hard requirement, is actually adding extra rooms to the property by converting like offices and dens and living rooms, especially if it's easy to throw up a wall, like in this case scenario, throwing up a wall, turning it into an extra bedroom, and then you can actually generate extra revenue from that unused square footage. And so in this example, you take a 4 bedroom, turn it into a 6 bedroom. And right now in Southern California, we're getting about an average of $1,200 a month for a bedroom. So by converting the extra rooms or the property into a 6 bedroom property, you're able to 2x the net income on the property. And that's kind of the example that I like to give a lot, right? Like when it comes to a 4 bedroom property, if you're able to rent that out for 4,000, like in this example, the what I always say is like if you were to add a fifth room, right, that's an extra $1,200 potentially. I always tell people if it's really small though, you have to price that accordingly. But if you're able to add a fifth room, or so here's a kind of easier way to break it down, right? Even if you just keep it at 4 rooms and you traditionally rent it out with $4,000 a month, if you're able to get $1,200 per room on average, now your gross revenue is $4,800 a month. Then when you add the fifth room, now you're looking at 6,000 a month. If you're able to add a sixth room, now you're looking at 7,200. So that's where the scaling opportunity really comes with PadSplit. Like I like to be super transparent with my hosts and tell them, hey, a two-bedroom condo, you're probably going to be better off just renting that out traditionally, just because there's no opportunity to scale that revenue. Three-bedroom properties sometimes work for us. Sometimes they break even, but if you're having a hard time filling it in general, then we can definitely be an option to help reduce that vacancy loss, and we'll talk about a little bit about that later. But really, 4+ bedrooms is where I always get people's eyes open really wide because they're like, "Wow, that is a crazy amount of revenue for a single family property." I have some case studies in here where we'll show how that's actually possible. And so I talked a little bit about the vacancy, right? So I do get people who bring me three-bedroom properties regularly, and they're like, "Hey, I've been trying to rent it out for 4,000 a month, 3,000 a month, whatever the pricing is, in the area." And they're like, "I just can't fill it. I'm struggling to get qualified people." And so by you renting out room by room, even though you might not make more cash flow in that scenario because it is only three rooms, you might reduce your vacancy risk, right? So on PadSplit, our average tenure is 8.5 months when it comes to the people renting these rooms. They rent out the property they do commit to 31 days in the property and 12 weeks on our platform. But like I said, the average is around 8.5 months. So if you were to look at like leasing out that property, the way the numbers calculated in this example are based on a $2,000 a month rent. Um, and if you were to look at it, you rent it out for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, it takes you 2 months to refill that property. And this is considering like a four-bedroom. Those two vacant months are costing you $4,000 a month, so 8% vacancy rate, which is kind of a standard underwriting example. Even if assuming you're a 9% vacancy rate on a pad split, and say you did convert it into those six rooms, you're not going to have everybody move out all at once. So it's not an all or nothing revenue system. If you have one person move out, you still have five people in a given month paying you that income. And then say the next month, if somebody else moves out, right, you still have five other people paying you revenue. So you're generally going to be still increasing that cash flow and reducing that vacancy risk at the same time. So that's just something I like to talk about, is that in those like examples of those three bedrooms, if you fill all three and then 6 months later somebody moves out, and you still have two people paying you the rent, versus if you had somebody move out of that after 12 months, you might take 2 or 3 months to refill it up again, right? And so now we're going to jump into the case study. So I do have two case studies today for the presentation. I don't think we'll have time to get to both. So I'm gonna get through this one, and then we'll talk about where if we have time, we'll chat over the second one. But if not, like I said, you can always schedule another call with me. We can chat about this. So what I like to do in these presentations is kind of show you. I can talk all day about what PadSplit is and what we do, but I like to show you how it can be applied. And that I think is very important, because I've done a lot of these presentations and people are like, "Well, I just don't get how this works. How can I make it work in my market?" Things like that. And here's some examples of how it can even work in Southern California, which is what a lot of people tell us. They're like, "It will never work in Southern California, because of the acquisition costs." But it does, and I'll run some numbers here. And just to give you a backtrack on like what we are as a company, right? We've been operating since 2018, and we have almost 26,000 rooms on our platform as of today. We're adding about 1,600 rooms a month on our platform. We've housed over 55,000 people. So we know what we're doing. When we run these numbers, especially in LA, which is a newer market for us, we just launched in LA back in May. We're scaling quickly, but we apply all those things that we know from other markets and my local knowledge, and that's how we make it work here. So we're going to look at the zip code 92704, which we didn't have when I put this together last week. We didn't have any inventory in that zip code specifically, but we do have some inventory in the next over zip code, which is 92647. And when I do my in-person presentations, what I like to do is I like to find something local to that area. So that way it kind of is super applicable to people who are in that market. But in 92647, we do have five active rooms. A unit is a room in our parlance. Five active rooms, and this is our average weekly price, which is 1269 monthly per room. And the occupancy is sitting at 100% average occupancy. It took about 4 days to get to the first booking, and 13 days to get to 80%. So that's what I always like to mention. And we'll talk about insurance at the end here, but at the quick answer is most traditional landlord policies will cover this. However, if sometimes it does get a little tricky at 4+ rooms, and some carriers will drop you. So I always say, talk to your insurance broker, see if that, how they handle that. And if that does happen, we actually do have an insurance provider that we work with specifically in all 50 states that can insure up to any amount of rooms. So we have some people who've built ground up pad splits, 16 bedrooms, 16 baths, ensuite bathroom properties. They'll insure that. And it usually ends up even actually being cheaper than some of the other policies. So it's not like, oh, last resort. We actually recommend that to everybody who's doing pad split. It's just sometimes, if you have a landlord policy on a 4 bedroom house, that's where it might be a little cheaper. But that's kind of the short answer. And if you want, you can reach out to me. I can share the insurance provider there. So what I do is when I do this case study, I find our local market data. And then I go on like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, Zillow, kind of look for rooms for rent in the area, see what the average room rents are going for. This room here is $13.50 a month. The One of the things I always like to call out, however, is our rooms do need to be furnished and utilities included. And very infrequently do you see that same setup on some of these rooms for rent on when I do my comps. Essentially, most of the time you're going to have to bring in your own furniture, you're going to pay your own utilities. So that's where we can usually get a pricing premium, as well as when people are finding or trying to search for a room for rent on Craigslist or something like that. They are nervous about signing a 12-month lease with someone, a stranger, strange roommates, all this type of stuff. So that's where it kind of gets a little harder for individual tenants to try this out or maybe do it themselves. Unless they have friends that are willing to do it, maybe they don't want to take that chance. PadSplit kind of opens that door, makes it simple. They can move in super smooth. The utilities, furniture is all taken care of. They just have a flat monthly fee, and they have a little bit of flexibility after their 12-week commitment. So that way, if they know that they're not signing up for something that could go wrong. And so I found a property in Santa Ana in 92704 that was listed for sale. I always like to disclaim. So this property I think is actually still listed, but at the end of the day, I I I limit myself in what I find on these listings because of the fact that I search for properties with 4+ bedrooms, 2,000 square feet plus, and properties that have Matterports. So there's a lot more opportunity out there. If you've ever done a Zillow search and you check off the filter for a virtual tour, 3D tour, Matterport, whatever, it significantly reduces the results. So that's where sometimes you'll find that these properties tend to be a little bit more expensive than what you'd be able to find if you were just, either through your wholesale channels investing or through your deal flow normally. So this is the property, 9147 Susan Street. I have the floor plans here. And as you can see, it was a 4 bedroom, 3 bath before the reno that I, hypothetically do. And this was actually a unique example because in Southern California, for the most part, we don't find closed-in office rooms. That's kind of very rare. I know that we showed that in our example of that floor plan template that I showed a couple slides back. But the in Southern California, that's not super common. But in this one, I did find an office. So it's not listed as a 5th bedroom. So it's a little sneaker bedroom that I found there. And it's this center room here where I did the +1 room that is listed as just an office and not counted in the listings 4 bedrooms. But by walling off the living room here, as you can see on the right, and adding a door there, you can turn that living room into a bedroom. It would actually be a pretty big bedroom. So, depending on how, I'm not a contractor or an architect, but I always tell people this is just a rough idea just to show as an example. You might even be able to turn that into 2 bedrooms, right? You have opportunities there. And then here you had a second living room on the back of the property. That room, you could add another wall and a door, turn that into an extra bedroom. And it was a 2-story property, but on the top floor, I didn't find any opportunities really to add an additional bedroom. So we left that as is. So for this property, we were able to add 3 rooms to the main house. So really your reno costs, this property is pretty set up, ready to go. As far as like rehabbing, it's not really like an investor's dream, right? As you see on the listing descriptions. So you really would only have the cost of conversion to adding those walls, those doors, and then adding the furniture. And then maybe if you wanted to do a light reno, you could do that as well. But so the reno is definitely light considering you're just adding those 2 doors. And so I estimated a rental income of around $1,100 to $1,400 per room. So at PadSplit, we actually don't control our host pricing. We provide data and recommendations, but at the end of the day, our hosts get to price it however they want because each investor has their own individual goals, right? Some investors are flippers that are underwater and they're like, I just need to stop the bleed and I need to fill these rooms fast. So they're going to price it more competitive. Some hosts want to just be a little bit more picky about who they let in the property. So they will, hold it vacant for a little bit longer, maybe at a higher price, things like that. But this property was very close to Harbor Boulevard, which is a major street in Santa Ana, very walkable to a lot of stores. So you don't necessarily even need a whole bunch of parking. There's a lot of public transit in the area. When I averaged it out, so back to pricing real quick. So you can actually price a master bedroom with a private bath a little bit higher, right? There is a premium there. And so what you can do is, that's where I put that range of about $1,100 to $1,400 a month per room. Based on our averages we're seeing in the area, I just did it at that $1,200 a month per room, which gives you at the total of 7 bedrooms about $8,400 a month in gross revenue. So I don't go too deep into the costs and the expenses, right? Because at the end of the day, each person's going to handle it differently. Some people are going to buy these properties cash. Some people are going to buy them with hard money. Some people are going to refinance them, right? Happy to have conversations with individuals if they want to talk about like the financing options you have for a pad split, but everybody kind of does it a little different. Everybody's going to run their own underwriting a little bit different. I do help with underwriting specific properties if people have questions, and that's why I put my meeting link in the chat. So if you have a property maybe that you're curious to see what the numbers would look like, happy to chat about that. And I can actually help anybody in the entire United States. We have about 30 core markets, and I have a slide that'll talk about that. But in this area, 4 bedroom houses rent for about $4,250 a month. So you're increasing your gross revenue by 97.6%. So almost 100% increase in revenue for that property. And what I always tell people is there's even better deals out there, right? So as an investor, you probably have your own access to deal flow, whether that's with working with your wholesalers or have an agent that's kind of finding you off market deals or just scouring the MLS for deals that make sense for you. And like I mentioned, my Zillow search is very limited because I do that quick floor plan search because I could technically try to cipher through all the pictures on the listing and things like that, but I try to just do it quick and dirty so that way I can give more examples to every presentation I do. Um, so I do have a little bit of time here to where I can talk about the other case study. This one's even better. So this one's in 90023, and same thing. We didn't have anything specifically in that zip code, but we did have something inventory in the nearby zip code of 90033. 5 active rooms in the market, $295 per week, and they're all shared bathroom type of rooms. No master bathroom, no master bedroom bath combos, and the occupancy 100% average occupancy, and 5 days to first booking, 6 days to 80% occupied. I will say this property specifically, I know that host, and I think they are a little underpriced because anytime they have a turnover, that room fills up quickly. Usually it fills up within 48 hours of it becoming available again. But I did still run some comps in the area to kind of see what's going on in the market. This property is averaging about 1275 per month per room. And like I said, again, you see these prices of 1060, 950, unfurnished, no utilities, things like that. So those things all influence the pricing, but this is live pricing that we're seeing today. This property is still live on the platform and people are paying that rent of 1275 per month per room. But here's our example property, 3561 East 6th Street in LA. Now this property did sell, and I think, so I did it at a presentation about 3 weeks ago, and I think one of the investors in the presentation went out and bought it. And I'm still waiting for my referral fee. Just kidding. But this property actually was pretty unique because for LA, it already had 7 bedrooms, 2,700 square feet, pretty large. And it had been sitting in the market for quite a bit. So that's why I kind of positioned it as a good opportunity for an investor to reach out to. Now this one is a little bit more of an investor special. The pictures don't do it justice on this screen here. It was, you can tell that they were in the middle of a light rehab, nothing crazy, no walls torn down, but there are like the carpets torn up. There's some drywall work that needs to be done, but nothing too crazy. And so here's the floor plans. So this is the bottom floor. Like I said, it was already 7 bedrooms. We had 3 bedrooms here existing, and they had a large living room on the on the first floor. We were able to add 2 little walls here and turn that living room into an additional bedroom. And that was the first floor. And the second floor, we were able to add another bedroom in. They had like a family room up here. And I see in the way I did it up is I said, let's bring this wall out to make it flush with the other bedroom. And we can then be able to add a closet to this room. So we don't require you to have closets in these rooms. But if you do have one, that is a nice option. If you don't have a closet, we just require like a wardrobe or a dresser in the room, someplace for the members to store their clothes. And this one actually, if I believe correctly, had plans drawn up already for an ADU in the back. So there was even more opportunity there for expansion. Um, we were able to add 2 rooms to the main house. Like I said, ability to add an ADU in the back. This one would it be a little bit higher of a rental cost because you had to finish out the renovation that they were doing, redo the floors, things like that, and then add those rooms, which is a little bit more involved in that first case study. And then rental income of between 1,100 and 1,300 per room for this area. And it's very close to the freeway and downtown LA. I estimated a PadSplit gross income averaging out that $1,200 a month per room again, which I think is very conservative because, like I said, we're seeing that $1,200 places way farther from LA, and that property that I used to comp it out is actually seeing sold very fast. So I think that's definitely under market. And we're seeing that 1275 currently in that market. So I always like to be conservative so that way I don't tell people something and then the numbers are way off. But I'll just shy of 11,000 gross revenue. It was a little tough to comp out this property as far as the traditional long-term rents, but I kind of gave it some leeway and gave it around $5,000 a month. The best I could see was really like 4,500, but like I said, I like to be conservative. So even at $5,000 a month, you're looking at 116% increase in revenue. And once again, better deals out there. And so we actually have partnered with New Western to find better deals. So if you guys need help connecting with a New Western agent, feel free to reach out and I can send you a connection there. They do get some deal flow in all over the country, but also in Southern California as well, where they are wholesalers. So use that information as you will. But so what are the services that PadSplit actually does, right? So we talked about how to make one of these, what the opportunity is here, but what services does PadSplit actually provide? So what we do is when you list a property on our platform, what we're going to do is we're going to advertise it not only on our website, but also on 60 plus other partner websites like Zillow, Zumper, Apartments.com, HotPads, all the major Rent by the Room websites, as well as doing Google and social media ads. And we spend about $1 million a month on marketing for our active listings. So we're really good at finding the people who want to rent these rooms, putting these listings in front of them, and showing them what they could be getting. And then once somebody's interested in booking one of these properties, they actually go through a background check, income verification, credit check, all in order to make sure that they're qualified to move in. And something I always like to tell people, especially in a tenant-friendly state like California, is we actually do have a system. So our standard default is that if they qualify through our screening and the room is available, the member can book the room automatically, and it's all sight unseen. So they don't do showings or open houses or anything like that. It's all just based on the listing. And so that's why we recommend putting like smart locks on the individual room doors so that way you can just send them a code. But the other way to do the bookings is that you can actually set up booking approvals. And during the booking approval process, you have 24 hours to decline the booking for any reason. There's no penalty for declining. However, at the end of 24 hours, it does get automatically approved, but there's some leeway there. Like if you need to decline it and ask them to rebook, you can. But during that 24 hours, you can actually run any additional screenings that you want. You can ask them additional questions. You can hop on a call with them, whatever makes you feel comfortable. At the end of the day, we're not trying to force anyone into your home. And then once they're in the property, they do have access to our mobile app, which allows them to not only message you, they can message each other. You can send whole house messages to everyone in the property. They rate each other, you rate them. And also, they can submit maintenance tickets within the app, and they'll show up in your portal. So if they have like a leaky faucet or something, they can submit a ticket for that, and then you can respond to that accordingly. Because one thing we don't do at PadSplit is we're not physical property managers, right? So we don't handle anything physical in the property. We're mostly I like to say, in the people business. where we handle filling these rooms. We also handle the payment collection. So we handle the payment collection through the app, where the members pay via debit or credit card, and they pay directly through the app, and we handle the payment collections on a weekly basis. However, the stays are not weekly. So I think I mentioned earlier, they do commit to 31 days in the property and 12 weeks on the platform. However, the average stay is about nine months. So, and it really just depends on the individual, what their plans are, right? And that's something you can ask if you are in that screening period. You can say, how long do you plan on staying, right? Because I know most hosts are going to want a longer tenured member. I always suggest though asking how long do you plan on staying, not hey, we're looking for longer term people, because of course then everyone's going to say that they're long term. But people get confused sometimes by the fact that we collect payments on a weekly basis. They think this is short term, and it's not. It's more of a mid to long term solution. We have plenty of members that have lived in PadSplits for years. At my event on Tuesday, I actually I had a property manager there that he manages 1,100 doors for PadSplit owners, and he says his average tenure is 500 days, right? So yeah, and really, it's all comes down to how you are as a property manager, as a host as well. So yeah, we handle the payment collection on a weekly basis, and then our hosts get paid out on the first week of the next month. And then, oh, looks like I doubled up my slide here. And so this is just an example of where we market, right? In our core markets, which are going to be the 30 major metros that we operate in. We have two different types of markets, and if we do have time, I can show a little demo of what the difference is there, and where our core markets are and our emerging markets. But in our core markets, we're going to do all these advertising tools. And the main difference between a core market and an emerging market is, in an emerging market, we just mostly do the platform sharing, where we syndicate our listings out to those websites that I mentioned. But however, in our core markets, we do that social media, Google, everything like that. LA, for example, is a core market. Dallas, Atlanta, other major metros. And so, like in Atlanta, where we started and where we have 8,200 rooms on our platform, like you'll see us on bus ads. You'll see us on train stations, train stops, things like that. But we just do everything we can to market our platform and stuff like that, to try to attract that member base. Now, I mentioned why we call the tenants members, right? So what we do is, as you can see here, we have our owners, the landlords, sign a 12-month lease to list their property on PadSplit with PadSplit LLC. We have an LLC created for each state. And then we actually place the tenants under that LLC as members of that LLC. And we do the lease for two reasons. I always like to tell people, like, it's not to trap hosts into doing this against their will for 12 months. Like, hey, gotcha. Yes, PadSplit is in Vegas. Well, we can, if we have time, we'll take a look at the map. I think we have about 1,400 rooms in Vegas. But at the end of the day, the lease is not there to trap anybody into doing this. If that was the case, that would create a really bad experience for our members, right? Because we are that two-sided marketplace. And so if the lease, if anybody wants to see a copy of our lease, it's very transparent. I send it out to anybody who asks. There's no breakup fee or penalty involved. It's really just there for two reasons: financing reasons and compliance reasons. So for the financing side, we do put an estimated rent on there, on the lease, of what you might expect when you go on PadSplit. Like, we don't guarantee the rents or anything like that, but we do put an estimated rent on there. And a lot of our hosts use that to get a DSCR loan to refinance these properties. And then the other reason, the compliance reason, is some cities do have issues with unrelated occupancy and like boarding house type rules. By using this legal structure, it actually negates most of those rules. And so I always tell hosts, do your due diligence on the market, make sure that there wouldn't be an issue there. But in most of the core markets we're in, we're confident that this legal structure works well. We've actually litigated this legal structure in Atlanta, where we started. It was our home city, and we've won numerous lawsuits with the city, because of the fact that this legal structure is sound. And really what it is it creates a relation between the members. So now, if a city has a rule against unrelated occupancy, they're now related through the LLC. So it's more of a corporate housing structure at that point. And really, at the end of the day, our lease, we've never had a pad split get shut down for unrelated occupancy. So I would like to call that out. We've had pad splits get shut down for permit issues, right? Unpermitted addition in the back, or maybe you have a fire code violation or something like that with the property itself, not having like two methods of egress in a room or something like that. But as far as the unrelated occupancy, we've never had a pad split get shut down over 26,000 rooms in 7 years. So everybody always wants to ask me about evictions. So our evictions rate is 1.2%. We've gotten really good at mitigating evictions, I always tell people. So going through an eviction is the worst case scenario for everyone, especially in California. And we really try our best to not get to that point. And we have a couple of tools that we do to kind of prevent that from happening. Doing the payment collection on a weekly basis, that was a pretty significant thing that helped us drop that number. And because it makes the payments more bite-sized rather than one big lump sum at the end of the month. And we also have a support team that calls them, emails them, texts them to try to get them to pay. And if a member goes through a pad split, an eviction and a pad split, they're actually banned for life from pad split. So that a lot of people don't want to lose access to the only affordable housing solution. So they will, and they don't want that on their credit either. So most of the time what we find, especially in California, and this is really applicable everywhere in the United States, is that because the rooms are furnished and everything like that, utilities are included. If somebody loses their job or something, they just tend to leave. And while turnovers are not the best case scenario, it's really that's the best case scenario when it comes to how to get someone out, is that they just leave, because then you don't have to go through the eviction process or anything like that. But if somebody does get into an eviction or squatting situation, you do have that reduced risk, because now say you have a 5-bedroom house, one person's not paying, 4 other people are still paying you. Versus if that 5-bedroom house was rented traditionally and the family stopped paying, you're out that 100% of the income. So in the same way the vacancy risk is reduced, so is the eviction risk. Our hosts also can access the property 24/7, 365, because the membership agreements that the individual members sign only gives them the exclusive right to use the bedrooms, not the common areas. So they do have a shared right to the common areas. And so our hosts can go in there, if they need to visit the property, check on things, they can. I always tell hosts, don't be there every week. I did have a host that asked me, he goes, so I can go there every day? And I said, you're going to have a lot of turnover, buddy. Like, don't do that. But you can also put cameras inside the common areas, right? I always tell people, just make sure you disclose that on your listing, that there's going to be cameras. But you can put cameras in the kitchen, in the hallways, not in the bathrooms or the bedrooms. And I have to say that out loud, because I won't say it, and then somebody will list a property and there'll be cameras in the bedrooms. Does the eviction go on their credit? Yes. So if it goes to the court and everything, it goes on their credit. And does PadSplit contract include terms in the innkeeper law, or is an addendum needed? Eric, not sure what you mean by that. So usually PadSplit members do get tenancy, because we do require them to stay 31 days or more. So it's more like apartment renting than it is hotels or hospitality. And then Gabriel said, is single source insurance live already? We do have insurance, our insurance platform ready to go. It's not our platform, but it's a provider that we work with. And I think that's what you mean. Yes, so we do have that insurance ready to go. And then yes, and then lastly, there's an incentive for them to stay current on the platform, as they want. If they go through an eviction, they'll never for life be able to book another PadSplit again. So all this means that you're able to get better returns, two times the average versus the traditional rental. You have a high collections rate. We have a collections rate of 97.5%. Low eviction rate, this does need to be updated. We're at 1.2%, and 5 days median to refill a room, so you reduce your vacancy loss. So that's kind of in a nutshell what PadSplit is and things like that. I like to include this. Here's a copy of our buy box. If anybody if you're not able to see the video, you'll be able to watch it later on the recording and grab that QR code. But that QR code is going to take you directly to a PDF of this buy box. This buy box is mostly recommendations, and these are just what makes a good pad split in general. Everything in the top section here Everything in blue is a hard requirement though. So rooms do need 2 points of egress, right? You need there is at least an 80 square foot requirement for the rooms. And I tell people this, but a lot of times they're like, that's just code things. Why are you saying that? And I'm like, it's because I have to say it because somebody out there will then go and convert a basement with one staircase for our 7 rooms, and that'll be a fire hazard. And then they'll say, yeah, you never told me I needed this. So that's why I put that in there. Can you expand on the creative ways to fund these properties? Like you mentioned, DSCR. So we do have a lot of properties, a lot of hosts, and this is for Nash. We do have a lot of hosts that do sub two deals. They find wholesale deals. We actually work with a couple lenders nationally that can help finance co-living properties, and they can work with you to, make sure that you're getting the best case scenario for your loan product. Because a lot of people will say like, well, if I have an 8 bedroom house now because I've converted some living rooms and stuff, how am I going to finance that? We have lenders that we work with that they're not part of the company, but they've just are one of our lenders, Fernando. I work with him a lot at a lot of my events. He's a host himself, so he knows what the struggles are when it comes to financing these things, and so that's why he started trying to find unique loan products, and he's a loan officer. Happy to connect you with him. Are you operating in Utah? So that is going to be an emerging market for us. So what that just means is the advertising is a little bit more host driven. We still do the screening and the payment collection, but we're not doing as heavily advertising in that market. So next steps, if you have a property that is sitting on the market or not, not being able to fill, or maybe it's not selling, let's talk and see how we can make these numbers work for you. And then we also do have a referral bonus. So feel free to reach out to me about how to set up a referral bonus. If you know someone who has a property that you think would be a great fit for PadSplit, we love to pay our referral bonus. Actually, for the next 5 days, the referral bonus is $2,000 to the referrer, and then the referee. I don't know if I used that correctly, but the person sending in the referral gets $2,000, and the person that gets referred gets $1,000 credit on their account. So that's only for the next 4 or 5 days, I believe. So if you have somebody that's interested and you want to take advantage of that, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, the standard referral bonus is $1,000 for the person who referred us over. And then for real estate agents, you can expand your buy box and do more volume, or your client's buy box, and help them do more volume. So I always say, like, if you're an agent, feel free to chat with me. We can talk about how you can implement this model in your market and help your investors do more business, expand their buy box, find those deals that they maybe are overlooking currently. We have an agent in Atlanta that we've worked with for a couple of years now. He's done over 200 transactions for PadSplit investors. So, it really helps him grow his business. The left QR code is going to be my contact card. You can download that from my Blink. The middle one is going to be a link to book a call with me. And then the right QR code is going to be the link to that link tree that I posted in the beginning. How much does PadSplit get? Okay, let's see. I have a couple questions. Carolyn, I hope I'm saying that right. My wife's name is Caroline, and she hates when people call her Carolyn. So I hope that you're not Caroline, and I'm calling you Carolyn. Do you have opportunities for investors to lend private money if you may not want to get them into the brick and mortar? Um, yeah, so we don't have we have a vendor network in all of our core markets. So if you are a private money lender and you want to get added to that, feel free to reach out. Um, at the end of the day, like, we don't most of our investors either have their own lender, or if they are looking for somebody, they'll go through our vendor network. How much does PadSplit get paid for room rentals? So we charge two fees. We have a booking fee, so we don't charge anything up front to list a property on our platform. We only charge a fee once we do what we say we're going to do. And so the first fee is that booking fee, and that booking fee is that we take the first 10 days of rent collected for any new member that we source. However, that is a one-time fee for that member. So if that member moves in and stays for 2 years, that's only the booking fee is only charged for that time. So consider it like a lease up fee for a real estate agent might charge, right? They might charge 30 days first months. We just charge 10 days. However, that can be waived if a host finds their own member. So when you create a listing on our platform, you get access to a shareable link, a promo code, that if somebody books using those tools, we still do the screening and the payment collection. However, we don't charge the booking fee because we didn't have to advertise to find that person. So that's the first fee. The only other fee is the 8% platform fee, and that's 8% of revenue collected. So those are the two fees that we have. Devon, can you give us your email for those who don't know how to use the QR code? Yes, here is my email address in the chat. It's just devon.aguirre@padsplit.com. Feel free to reach out to me there. Fantastic questions. Awesome, guys. So we do have a couple more minutes. So if you guys have some time, feel free to stick around. What I'd like to do is share our map tool, which lets you kind of analyze markets. And what you can do is once if you're interested, you can set up a host account on our platform, and you can schedule a call with me, and you can actually have access to this tool as well. How do you become a member of PadSplit so you can rent a room? Just go to our website, padsplit.com. And so if you are a host yourself, Valerie, I think we've spoken before. And if you are a host yourself, you can actually refer a member, and you can get a credit for that. And I think it's $250 credit. And then also anybody looking to rent a room would just go to padsplit.com, and then you can check out inventory in your local area as well as go through the application process. So I'm going to pop over to our map tool here really quick. So this is our map tool that we use, like I said, to help investors analyze specific markets. Anything that's a blue dot you're going to see is our core market, and the core markets are where we do all those marketing features that I mentioned. Gray dots are going to be emerging markets. Emerging markets are markets that we have units in, and technically anywhere in the United States is an emerging market if it's not a core market. But the gray dots are going to represent active inventory that we have in the market. And so the gray dots, what that just means in those markets, hosts, like I mentioned earlier, have to advertise a little bit more themselves because we don't do as heavy advertising in those areas. So the host growth or member growth and member move-ins are more host driven. So we'll start with Atlanta. I always like to check out Atlanta. That's our starting market where we first started. We have 8,200 rooms in that market. Like I mentioned, a unit is a room. And the demand, as you can see here, we're tracking 39,000 unique searches on our website alone within the past 30 days for rooms for rent. So there's a huge demand even with 8,200 units. And here's our average weekly prices. So as you can see, we break it out for like a bedroom with a shared type of bathroom. So maybe there's 3 rooms that are sharing a bathroom, that type of thing. Our max ratio for that is 4-to-1. The max you can have max of 4 rooms sharing 1 bathroom, but we recommend no more than 3-to-1, just because it tends to create a little bit more issues if 4 people are sharing a bathroom. And then we also break it out to rooms with a private bathroom. So those are usually like master bedrooms. Or like I said, we do have a lot of investors who are building ground up pad splits now, where you have 16 rooms with 16 ensuite bathrooms. In Atlanta, even with all those rooms, some people are like, oh, is it getting saturated? Not really. We are sitting at 84% average occupancy, with 9 days to first booking and 36 days to 80% occupancy, which is still spectacular numbers. Really what it comes down to in Atlanta, though, is it is a little bit more competitive. So you can't just throw on any property, right? You might have to include some amenities. Like our minimum furnishing requirements are a bed frame, nightstand, and then if the room does not have a closet, it needs a wardrobe or a wardrobe or a dresser, someplace for them to store their clothes. However, in Atlanta, you might need to put a desk in, right? You put a little desk in, because that is a little bit of an amenity. We've had some hosts put in mini fridges, TVs, anything above the minimum requirements is just an amenity. So it just depends. But Atlanta is still a great market. I know somebody asked about Charlotte, and I want to get to you in your question about HOAs. So HOAs usually are okay with us. It really just depends on the HOA itself. HOAs, the major issue usually is if they have issues with renting out the property at all. Because most HOAs don't have provisions against midterm rental, which is what we classify as, because we do require them to stay 31 days. And we also have you sign that 12-month lease. So that kind of gets around a lot of those HOA regulations. But I would just, you just have to make sure that the HOA is not going to be super intense about like, hey, you're renting out this property to different people, stuff like that. So on our buy box, you'll see that that we don't recommend buying a property in HOA, but like we have plenty of properties on our platform that are in HOAs. So I forgot who asked that question about the Charlotte property, but if you want to take a look at what some numbers would look like for something like that, I know you mentioned it was turnkey, so I'm not sure if you meant like it's turnkey for PadSplit or just turnkey for somebody to purchase. But happy to talk to you about what some numbers could look like. But as you can see here, we just launched this market in May as well. We're sitting at 75% occupancy. But really, what I always like to direct people to when you're looking at these maps is the days to booking, because we are scaling so fast right now that we're adding a lot of units. And especially at the end and the beginning of the month is when most of our hosts will activate their properties. So, like we added 1,600 units last month. I want to say 500 of them were activated within the last week of the month. So that's where sometimes the occupancy numbers can dip for the first 2 weeks of the month because we onboard so much inventory all at once. And then as it digests through the market, that's when the occupancy gets back up. But you really, the key stat is to look at like days to first booking, 26 days to 80% occupancy. That's going to show you how fast these are booking rather than the occupancy, right? Especially because these markets are active and live. So we're adding new properties, people are booking these properties, and so that occupancy number changes, especially in a market with only 183 rooms like Charlotte. You add 20 rooms in there, that's going to be a 5% drop in occupancy. I don't know about that math though. So it is Friday. That math might be wrong, but you know what I mean. You get the sentiment. I did not hear somebody ask about Las Vegas, so I wanted to pull up that one real quick, kind of show you the stats for Vegas. Vegas has been around for about 2 years. We're at about 1,000 rooms, tracking about 8,000 searches on our website. Here's your average pricing. Same thing with the occupancy. We're sitting around 77%. I think going into the last week of the month, we were at like 92%. Nationwide, we are at 92% occupancy. But like I said, as we get to the end of the month, we're on the third here. We've added a lot of these properties on Tuesday, Monday this week. What we find is that we see most of our bookings at the end of the month and on over the weekends. So as we go into this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw this number jump 5, 6, 7%. And then so that's Vegas for you. We have time for one more. I like to show Dallas. Dallas is a great market. Let's take a look at this. So we have 1,500 rooms in Dallas, 12,000 searches we're tracking. Here's your pricing. And then we have 81% occupancy, 8 days to first booking, 32 days to 80% occupancy. So another thing that impacts occupancy and why I say like sometimes this number can look a little weird is because we don't set the pricing, right? If we were I want to make sure we have enough time to show these markets. We're going to pop over to Denver real quick. Denver is a new market just launched 2 months ago. So we're actively scaling that. These numbers will improve as we get more units, but happy to take a look at it. But our occupancy just comes down to three levers: location, listing, and price. So if you already have the property, you can't change location, right? So you can only have two other levers to maneuver: your listing and how you create that listing, doing nice photos, good listing description, and that's what I help people with. And then also you can adjust the price. So at the end of the day, you lower the price low enough, everything will fill, right? But it's finding that balance of where the market wants to be. Here's Phoenix. Phoenix has been around for about 2 years. I think we launched at the same time as Vegas. 1,300 rooms, 84% average occupancy, 6 days to first booking, 34 days to 80% occupancy. Pricing is a little higher than Vegas, and we're tracking about 10,300 searches within the past 30 days in the Phoenix market. But yeah, I know that that's the time for everybody. I don't want to go over get anybody in trouble, so feel free to reach out. I posted my links in the chats. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me. You can book a call with me. Happy to chat. I love talking about co-living and PadSplit and just learning more about what everybody else is doing.
Hi, Devin. We do have another question that I'm just putting into the chat right now. And thank you so much, everyone, for your engaging questions. We really appreciate your feedback and all the wonderful questions that you've been sharing with us today. Haven't they been great questions, Devin?
Yeah, I will say I love when people ask me questions about this, because the worst case scenario is when I do a webinar like this or something and I'm talking to a wall. So I truly appreciate the questions. There's no dumb questions when it comes to this. I can actually stay for a couple extra minutes. I don't know, Linda, what your schedule looks like, so I do see some more questions populating. Happy
Of
to answer
course.
those. Okay,
Yes.
I always
Go
block
right
about 30
ahead.
minutes after these things because I know how these things go. Can you share the link for reviewing the market insights? So you do need to set up a host account on our website. Feel free to reach out to me and I can get you set up with that. The doors to the bedrooms have to be steel or exterior doors. No, so the way that so we require 2 points, two methods of egress from the rooms. Most rooms are going to have this by default. It's really when you add rooms that you have to consider this. You just need a door, a door to the interior common areas, right? Like hallway door. which is just a normal interior door. And then you need a window. Usually that window needs to be big enough to be able to climb out of, right? It's for fire safety. That's kind of the idea there. But yeah, so you don't need steel or exterior doors. Some hosts will do solid core doors to reduce the sound, right? So that way, if there's because when a family's living in a house, they don't really care if the doors are soundproof. But sometimes when you're turning that individual room into its own little unit, having a solid door or more insulation sometimes helps with that. But yeah, any other questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat. And I'm happy to answer those for you guys. I did talk straight for an hour, so I'm